I've been a big fan of Traska for a few years now, and I've been really wanting to add one to the collection. I think it was their Mint Freediver that initially caught my attention, but after researching the brand, I realized I actually just really connected with the design language as a whole. And while the brand does borrow some cues from iconic brands, Traska's offerings seem to consistently capture the essence of the quintessential sports watch with every model line they put out. They just don't miss. Traska was born in 2018 from a Kickstarter campaign fueled by the first iteration of their Freediver dive watch. The idea behind Traska was to take advantage of vintage-inspired looks and infuse that with contemporary build quality for an end product that could perform as great as it looks. This is the Traska Venturer Meteorite GMT. This limited edition was introduced earlier this year, and on the day of release, all 100 production pieces sold out in less than 2 minutes. Fortunately, I was able to snag one for myself, and it has absolutely dominated my rotation. I'll get into the details of why, but it essentially boils down to this. I think it's the best GMT watch for under $1,000. Let's look at some of the specifications. The Venturer has a case diameter of 38.5 millimeters, a lug-to-lug of 46 millimeters, a case thickness of 9.75 millimeters without the crystal, a water resistance of 150 meters, lug width of 20 millimeters with a 3-link style bracelet that tapers down to 16 millimeters at the clasp, box style double domed sapphire crystal with AR coating applied to the underside, grade A BGW9 Super Luminova, which in this iteration was improved from the previous gen, and it's awesome. And it's powered by the Miyota 9075 automatic flyer GMT movement. And it all comes in at a retail price of $750 for the non-LEs and $965 for the Meteorite versions. Time for some highlights, and I'll start with the obvious. This thing's sexy as hell. I love the dial proportions with the lume-filled baton, hands and indices, beautifully framed date window, and a contrasting color GMT hand that provides a pop of color. This LE version has an incredible Meteorite dial sourced from a fragment of the Moine-Illusta Meteorite, and I'm a geologist, so you're gonna have to hear me talk about that for a few minutes. The first fragment of the Moine-Illusta Meteorite was actually discovered in 1906 by a group of children playing in the Swedish countryside. The dense rusted rock they brought home was later identified as being of celestial origin. This specific meteorite is comprised of a molten core of an asteroid that cooled at an extremely slow rate over millions of years, in which time the iron and nickel-rich alloy began to separate the nickel from the other metals, producing a crystal lattice of iron-rich and opposing nickel-rich bands, known as the Winbenstatten pattern. There is no shortcut to this process, which means this can't be recreated in a lab. So if you want that space rock look, you have to get that authentic space rock, period. Yes, that rant was a bit self-indulgent. However, I think it's important to understand something that actually had not really occurred to me until I saw this in person. The dial is metal. The stock images put out by Traska show kind of like a light gray pattern, and it does look like that in some light, but it's so much more dynamic than I thought. The dial can range from a shining bright almost white down to a dark charcoal gray, and it almost never looks the same twice, which I think is incredibly cool. Half of this video so far has been about space rocks, so let's switch gears to movement and wearability. The dimensions on this are absolutely incredible. I mean, the case diameter sits right in the Goldilocks zone at 38.5 millimeters, which is awesome for my 7-inch wrist, but will also comfortably fit most people. But even more exciting than that is the 9.7 millimeter thickness for a flyer GMT under $1,000. The Miyota 9075 movement has absolutely changed the game, and I love seeing how brands are weaponizing this affordable movement to make killer GMT options at prices we wouldn't have thought possible just a few years ago. The real magic with the 9075 is that it's only 4.92 millimeters thick, which is only about 1 millimeter thicker than their non-GMT 9000 series movements. And for comparison, the MT5652 found in the Tudor Black Bay Pro and Black Bay GMT are 7.5 millimeters thick. 7.5 compared to under 5. I'm not saying that Tudor isn't better in every other way, but for the Prince of Swiss watchmaking to be 50% thicker is insane to me. I understand and acknowledge that the Miyota's advertised accuracy is closer to Seiko at -10 to +30 seconds per day, but I think that's appropriate for the price point, especially when you're also getting a sub 10 millimeter thick flyer GMT. So where's like a dream? What else? The bracelet. The bracelet's incredible. I mean, it's an oyster style bracelet, but the links are a little shorter, so it's not quite as short as a President link bracelet, right? But and the positioning of the links are slightly different relative to each other. The links kind of meet more in the middle as opposed to 1/3, 2/3 type setup that an oyster has. but I mean, it wears great. And the construction is made of solid screwed links with brushing on the primary surface and polishing on the sides. The bracelet tapers from 20 millimeters at the lugs down to 16 millimeters at the clasp, where you have a push button micro adjust that functions absolutely fantastically. You can pull that off and make an adjustment super quick to make sure that you're always wearing the bracelet at the right size for your wrist. The action on the clasp feels super sturdy and gives you a solid click when you press it closed. I also like the little radial brushing swirlies on the clasp components. It's just a small detail that gives the watch an elevated feeling as you're putting it on. But generally, the bracelet's super comfortable with a quality feel that will always fit exactly how you want it to. But more important than all that, it can do this for some reason. The last thing I want to highlight is versatility. I know the go anywhere, do anything mantra is tired and it's been beaten into the ground, but the Venturer absolutely fits the bill here. You could throw it on a leather strap and dress it up and it'll look great. Or you could throw it on a NATO and do tool watch things with your tool watch. The 150 meters of water resistance is supported by screw down crowns for both the movement and the bezel operation. And the Venturer, like all Traska models, is subject to a stainless steel hardening treatment that increases the case and bracelet hardness by about 6 times. So as a result, these watches are tough to scratch and will stay looking new for much longer. And I know some people enjoy watching their watch patina over time, and I can understand that. But for me, if it's gonna stay looking better for longer, that sounds awesome to me. So we've talked about the good, so we have to talk about the bad. And the first thing I want to mention that really only pertains to the Meteorite limited edition is legibility. I mean, it's a metallic dial that reflects light constantly, but it really blends in with the hands and indices that are also metal. So, you know, legibility is relatively low, and that doesn't make a big difference to me. But at the end of the day, this is a watch, right? And if you're wearing a watch, you want to look at it to see the time. It might take you a little bit longer to see that on this watch. And to reiterate, just the Meteorite dial. The other dials look great. I mean, the blue, white, black, green, it's all gonna look super clean. You'll be able to have that legibility not be an issue on those other models. Second, this watch has such a loud rotor. I mean, I hear it spinning constantly, and it can slightly take away from the luxury feeling of the watch, right? Where you move your wrist and you hear it whirring in there, and it's just a different wearing experience than, say, you know, my Tudor, right? So every time I wear it, I'll hear the rotor, and what the streets are saying is this is because Traska fitted a thinner case back to keep the thickness down on this watch. And you know, for me, that sounds like a great trade-off. I would way rather hear the rotor and have a watch that wears and looks exactly how I want it to, but you know, that's personal preference and something I want to call out. But those are my only 2 very minor complaints about this watch, and I absolutely love pretty much everything about it. So I wanted to kind of do a comparison, see how does this stack up against other GMT watches under $1,000. So, you know, I think first you have to mention Seiko, right? What they're doing with their 4R34s in the SSKs and the field style GMTs, those have to be in the conversation. It's not a flyer GMT, it's a collar GMT, which means on the flyer GMT, you can operate the hour hand, the local hour hand individually, and on the collar GMTs, you can operate the second time zone, the 24-hour hand individually. So could just be about preference, but the flyer GMT is generally more desirable. And you know, the Seiko doesn't have that, right? But even though we're talking about a collar GMT, it's still a GMT watch for under $500. These typically go for about $450 at retail, but they're often listed on places like Amazon and other sites, other secondary market sites for down into the low 300s. So they're super attainable for that price, which is why I feel like they have to be mentioned. I also really like the, you know, some of the other watches that have the 9075, the Miyota in them, including the Notice Contrail. So the Contrail is a great watch. It's a little bit different styling, right? It's got the bezel, more of a dive style or GMT master style with that rotating bezel. So it's just a different wearing experience. The Traska is a little bit more svelte, right? It's a little bit more low profile with the internal rotating bezel. But Notice is doing great things. And, you know, I absolutely love the Contrail, and just the way that watch looks is, it's incredible, right? I'd love to handle one in person, and you know, it's one of those ones that when it pops up on my feed, I'm like, yep, I like that. There's also the Laurier Hyperion. So Laurier is doing a lot of vintage inspired stuff, a little heavier on the vintage styling than Traska. And the Hyperion is it looks like a vintage GMT Master, right? So it has the Pepsi bezel, but then it also has like these gilt accents and markings on it. And it has this heavily domed acrylic crystal that just looks so great. I mean, this is very much a choice on Laurier's part. They could have gone with a sapphire, they didn't. They go with this big old bubble crystal, and it really just makes the watch pop. The wearing dimensions are small, that vintage aesthetic, that vintage feel. I think that's another great option under $1,000 that is actually something that you should consider. Lastly, I really like the Henry Archer Verdun GMT. This thing's super clean looking. I've handled some of the other watches from Henry Archer, and I wasn't really tracking on this brand until recently. But after handling them and seeing the hype, I honestly thought it was just like maybe a fashion brand that was being pushed, because I see all these advertisements, and not often do you get these like pushed ads in the Reddit feed where you're like, okay, like what is this? Is this actually a quality a quality brand putting out quality products? And Henry Archer absolutely is. This Silt iteration that I think you can pre-order at the moment is super badass looking. I mean, it's got a textured dial on it. It has a mirrored Riot. It comes in at $600, and I believe, yes, it's also the Miyota 9075. So I know this was very focused, this brand comparison was very focused on other micro brands, but I mean, realistically, the utilization of this movement in particular has been a bit of a game changer, and micro brands are really taking advantage of putting this movement into their watches and creating a great product for the end consumer, which is you. So I do think that even as you add up all these and you take a look at them, I'm still taking the Traska. I think the Traska fits the bill for what I'm looking for a little bit better. I mean, I could easily have multiple of these in my collection and be super happy, but if I had to just pick one, it would be the Traska. And I think it's just that combination of the aesthetic and the execution and the thinness of it that combines for a package that I absolutely am in love with, and I haven't even been wearing my Tudor very much since I got this. So yeah, I love it, and I think that carries across to a lot of other Traska models that I really am into and could own multiple. I try not to own too many of one brand, but I would consider it for Traska. Thank you for checking out the video. This is This on Wrist. My name's Derek. Please like and subscribe. That would be super helpful. I'm just trying to get this off the ground, and hey, is this worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze here? Trying to squeeze these videos in with 3 kids running around. So let me know in the comments what you think, and support the channel. I appreciate it. Have a good one.